I'm Liz.
And I'm Marie.
And this is Mock It, a podcast from MetroStar, where we take a deep dive look into UX design, trending design topics, and making our work transform the government. Let's get started.
So today's topic is how do you make design spicy? And so designing for beauty and function. I'm super pumped today. In today's episode, we have Angela Terry. She's a freelance designer and design professor at Nova Community College. So she was one of my professors there. So I'm super pumped to be able to talk to her now.
Yeah, Angela, thank you so much for joining us. I'm actually really stoked about this because, I know Marie so well, so it's fun to see the academic, the other side of Marie as well. So thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully, there's some. I won't embarrass you too much.
No, she gets to see how I got groomed to be a designer.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me today.
Yeah. So do you want to first start out and introduce yourself, your passions, what you do?
Okay, so I consider myself a graphic designer first. I'm a graphic designer who teaches design at Northern Virginia Community College. I teach mainly print design with a few web classes. I'm also a freelance designer. I have been operating my business for 21 years now. I deal with a lot of just people around town, a lot of businesses in regards to associations and nonprofits, occasionally small businesses, and publishers. Let's see. I'm also a grad student at George Mason University. I am getting an MFA there.
Oh, yeah. Man, you're not busy at all.
No, I have so much free time on my hands.
So I can totally credit to taking Angela's classes so at work, Liz and our PMs and everyone always man, Marie, you do that so fast, or oh man, that took you no time at all. You need the afternoon to do it. And it's totally because Angela taught me how to set up my files, how to do all the layers, so that I can go in and make those quick changes. And it's not 2 hours of me recreating or, fudging something around because I didn't have the best practices in it. And then I took her freelance class. So right after school, when we were trying to find the jobs, we've talked about that before. I took her freelance class and was able to make a few dollars until I got a real corporate job.
I believe, at our programs at Nova, we do have a transferring degree. We just adopted that. It's a Associate of Fine Arts, which transfers to a 4-year. But I think in graphic design, a lot of our students get the Applied Associates, which is a trade school type of a degree where we train students professionally to get jobs after they graduate from Nova. And it is my goal in life to prepare my students in order to get jobs because, we all know education is not cheap. And I would hate for my students to invest their money and time in something and not see, not be able to achieve their dreams and getting a job in something that they love. And I am a production queen.
She is.
I make sure my students, I drill in that you need to know your production because design is great. But if you don't know how to set up your files, you're not setting your files up, you could be spending a lot of time preparing it for a printer. Or if the reason why I started designing was because I got tired of going behind designers who didn't know how to use the applications, didn't know how to set up master pages or style sheets. And that takes so much longer to work with if all that stuff is already in the document and you already know how to use it.
Well, I can attest from personal experience working with Marie. you're very process oriented, but you also have like everything is super organized. The files are very organized, and then the design systems that we use are very organized because of the way you have us set files up to help with this. So you're definitely like touching lives in practice. Like
yeah. So like Angela was saying, the style sheets and the files are from print, but I was able to take those fundamental concepts and apply them in. Now we use Figma, but in Sketch, and those design systems that you've talked about and the components, right? Learning how to set up them for best practice so that we just, you're one and done and going and applying them to your actual problems and not like, oh crap, I have to reset it up. Sorry, I like mumbled through. I didn't know if I could say crap on the podcast. Said it really light. This is not as impactful. But yeah, like, so we're not spending time on production stuff. We're spending time on the problems that we're trying to design and solve for.
Very cool. Yeah, I feel like I'm learning from the masters right here. So I have a question for you. So I heard that there's something called the Beyonce Rule that you have, or you teach, or you share with your students. Would you mind taking a second to share that with me and then our listeners? And then, because Maria, I'm assuming you probably already know about this as her student.
Yes, these are my most favorite rules.
Yes. Okay, so I came up with a set of 10 design rules to share with my students. Just common things I found that was going on within their design. And you have to kind of make it memorable. I know my professors, they're the design voice in my head. So I'm not trying to be the design voice, but hopefully that comes in. But the Beyonce rule is... it's the Beyonce rule. And I tell my students there could only be one Beyonce. And basically that means you need to have a focus in your design. A lot of people try to overcompensate and have a lot of things. They're not doing their hierarchy. And everything is coming at everyone at once. So I have the Beyonce rule to remind students you have one Beyonce. There could only be one Beyonce on stage, and the rest are backup singers and dancers. They look as good as Beyonce, but no, they don't look as good as Beyonce, but they complement her. So the Beyonce rule is to remind students that they have to have a focus.
Right, and I think...
And then you have to set up a hierarchy.
Yep. And that really translates into user experience as well, right? Because we've talked about applications or websites that if you have too many calls to actions or too many things that you want folks to do, which would be your Beyoncés, it's not good, right? It's confusing. I don't have confidence as a user about where I'm supposed to go. But if I have, right, that primary call to action button or whatever it might be, my Beyonce, I've improved the user experience and ease of use.
Oh, I love this. That's such a good analogy. I feel like that's like so relatable, like with like pop culture, and then like no matter who you're teaching this concept to, like you just made it in like such plain language for everyone to be accessible. So that's awesome. That's really cool. I might steal that from you guys. Be like, oh, what I learned today on the podcast.
And then do you want to go through your other rules? Because I think they apply so well across different industries of design.
Okay. So my next one is design isn't a Skittles commercial. Pick a color scheme. Color schemes can be very overwhelming, picking colors, and it just looks a little bit more professional and put together if you have a color scheme. This drives me up the wall. I call this my mother duck and her ducklings rule. When you're setting your text, your subheads, students like to, or some designers like to put their subheads in between, equally between the paragraphs, and it doesn't have ownership over what it's referring to. Normally the subhead refers to the text that follows it. So it should be closer to that text. So in this rule, it's just to remind that you should put things that relate to one another close to that item instead of equally spacing it. Okay, and then I have my the script club marketing rule. And the script club, this one, basically this is with just me, and I don't say this to my clients, but a lot of times clients want to put everything on the cover. Because they're like, well, there's so much going on. We need to let them know everything that's going on. But you're doing this like 32-page brochure, or you may have like an 8-page website. You don't put everything on the front cover. You design it so that the user, the reader, wants to turn the page and go into it. So that's that one rule. Drop shadows. No drop shadows. I tell my students the only thing they're allowed to cast a shadow on is themselves. I just feel I came up as a young designer and as a student in the 90s. All this technology was new, and I just feel that we just overused it, and sometimes it can be appropriate. And I'm not saying, it's bad design, but it shouldn't be in everything. And people tend to go to those quick filters and tricks as a way of, oh, I designed this, but do you really need that shadow? And then my 6th rule is align. They have to align in order to look nice on your page. And if they're just thrown about and there's no rhyme or reason, you don't have a grid, then there's something off with the design. It's not good design. Your image should work with the text. And number 8, America loves cheese. Consider the audience when dealing with cliches, because they may or may not work. This is one of my favorites. Don't let your type happen. Kern that shit. Students, or a lot of times people think, okay, I picked a font. Okay, I'm just going to type it in, and they don't do anything with it. They don't kern it. They don't try to stylize it or design it. They just type it in and just let it happen. And I think you can create beautiful visuals with just typography by just, kerning it and styling it. And I see that a lot in professional work. I have to kind of push my students to stylize their text. And next is audience. When, they're students, they normally don't have an actual client or actual audience, but I tell them to cast a small net to determine who their audience is when they're designing. And because normally they say everyone, or they try to be easy and say children. But I think children are a lot harder to design for than, your typical adult. And I tell them that, you cast a small net, you determine who your audience is, the age groups, what their lifestyle is like, what that person looks like. And if you catch someone outside of that, that's a win. But you need to focus on a core audience in order to be successful.
Do any of these ring true from what we've talked about over like the 2 years on our project? Sorry. So I have one follow-up comment for something you said with the with your script rule. Don't throw everything don't try and squeeze everything on the front page. We definitely run into that with managing a website, with trying to get everything above the fold, which is if you're looking at a website, the fold is what you see right when you get onto the website before you scroll down, up or down. It's just your automatic view. And so
that happened, that's hot real estate, no matter like if it's the home page, if it's an interior page, whatever page it is, it's still the hottest real estate on that page. And so how do you utilize that page to like, kind of like what you were saying, like you want to attract people to go like flip to the next page or flip to like the next thing to learn about. So for us, it'd be like on a website, potentially scrolling or to get to, like a more specific topic off of a link or something. So yeah, that definitely rings true. And then you've been doing a lot of print stuff lately with some of the flyers and stuff like that like marketing materials. So follow-up question is, for those who don't know much about kerning or the styling of the typography that you were talking about, if they haven't taken a design course, could you just give like a quick snippet of what you mean when you say kerning?
Okay, so kerning is the space between each individual character. And some typefaces is built in, other typefaces, it may not be. And basically going in and either reducing or increasing the space between the letter forms, depending on what your goal is in a design. Like one of my things that I warn my students about is basically, numbers. Number one, when you type a 1 and then you type in an 8, there's going to be a significant amount of space between the 1 and the 8. And you have to go in and tighten that space if it's the letter 18, if it's the number 18. So you want to watch out for that. And then when you have like letter forms like a capital A and a capital V, if it's spaced according to width, they may be like, significantly distance from one another. You want to go in and bring them closer together, because when we read shapes, not necessarily the actual characters when we're reading a word. So you want to go in and make sure you kern. And when I say like stylize your text, is there an interesting way that you can bring the words together, kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, that maybe emphasize a word, de-emphasize other words, like maybe articles, to make it more visually appealing for the viewer or the audience?
That's awesome. Yeah, that is. It's definitely a challenge, and I think that I work with you, like you're like such a you're on point with your design. So these are things that like are like become ingrained in you, and so it's cool to hear it from designers about like like the why behind you do stuff. And like when you're talking about it, like 1-8 or like versus like 18, I was like trying to visualize, and I was like, oh, that's a good point. Like with the spacing,
yeah. So we're gonna get like down into type right now, but I don't think a lot of people, and I didn't know, but font is made in like square boxes. Oh. You can make a whole font, so that's what their spacing is based off of. So the 1, if your baseline doesn't go that full width of the box, but the 8 hits both sides of the boxes, can you visualize it? It's really hard. I can show you like when you can create fonts, but they're in a bunch of like 1x1 squares. Oh, okay. And so then how much space that shape of the letter takes up is why it's weird when certain ones are put together.
Got it. Yeah. I've only taken one design class in my whole so that I find this really I feel like I'm like really getting like a crash course right now from experts. So
yeah, if you take typography, and when they talk about kerning and they give you a lecture on and they show you examples, your life is ruined, because everything after that, everything you see in life, you're like, oh my God. There was a point where I couldn't go to the movies because there was a kerning issue with the trailers, the MPAA green screen. There was a kerning issue. They fixed it, but there was an issue. And I was like, every time I saw it, But yeah, your life is ruined after you get to know more about type.
I have a funny joke question for you both with this and type. So how do you guys feel, or how do you both feel about Comic Sans?
So we have a lot of feelings about a lot of fonts. I will not use Comic Sans. I tell my students, if you use Comic Sans in my class, I will fail you.
Okay.
I'm joking. But some take me a little serious. So, but I feel that with a lot of fonts that get a bad rep, it's not because it's a bad font. It's just that people are using it a little too much, or they don't know how to use it. And I think Comic Sans is one of those fonts. It's not a bad looking font. It's just people overuse it and they're not using it correctly. And that's why it gets made fun of, unfortunately. I'm sure if it was in a comic book, no one would blink their eye or they would even, say anything. But maybe it shouldn't be, on an invitation to, your office meeting where you're talking about budgets. That's my feel on Comic Sans.
So funny.
And fonts like Comic Sans.
Yeah. In a previous episode, we were talking about the fonts, and my go-to elementary school PowerPoints was the Papyrus. There's just something about that texture. It's very awful. I understand that now, retrospectively. I was also really into Egypt and Cleopatra. So, but yeah.
I played that Ryan Gosling SNL skit. It's one where he is obsessed with papyrus and Avatar's coming out and he's upset because they're going to use it again. And he tracks down the designer.
Yeah.
In the street, I know what you did. And I just find it to be hilarious. Yeah, I'm guilty of I use that font for a magazine article on schizophrenia. And I cringe every time I see that. So I'm guilty of using fonts like that as well.
Well,
there's a time and place for them.
Yeah, that's very similar to what I was going to say. And then this kind of leads into one of our next questions for you, which is, so you mentioned that you have a background in graphic and print design. So you've sort of touched upon how you balance the functional needs with the aesthetics and of the choices you design. Anything else that you want to add to that? I know we kind of hit upon it when joking about Comic Sans and the right fonts to use in appropriate places, but any other words of wisdom that you might have on that?
Okay, so when you're talking about functional needs and aesthetic needs, as a graphic designer, you are there to meet the needs and the goals of the client. And a lot of times, I'm not saying that the client is always right, but the client has a goal and there's a reason why you're designing something. And there should be a concept behind it. Like if you're designing, a client needs a brochure or website, it should function. And if it doesn't, then that defeats the purpose. The aesthetic choices should fall in line with the functional needs of whatever you're designing. So, like a lot of things that I joke about with my colleagues is underlining links in printed material. Why? Why are you doing it? You can't print it. It's just, you can stylize it in a way where it is visible as a link, but I think to underline it is something from I guess old school graphic design. I call it Flintstone HTML. Where that used to be a thing where if you saw something underlined, you clicked it and it opened up something. So I think I'm constantly trying to balance, keep in line with the concept, the goals, and the aesthetic choices. I think as you mature as a designer, you become more aware of that. You're not just, oh, this looks cool, or you're trying to create a portfolio piece. It needs to function, because if it's not functioning as what it should be, then it's pretty much, it's art. it can be art.
Yeah. So in lines with that link example, so previously I've done some social media graphics. It used to kill me when I had to put hashtag something in the image. Because I was like, functionally, this doesn't work. Like, what is the goal? Link. It doesn't link, right? So that's why I really laughed at with the linking example. Right, or sometimes you have to educate folks on like the technology that you're using or the purpose and what it's communicating to your user, that if it's not able to do what you're communicating, like, it looks stupid and maybe unprofessional. So that used to kill me. I see a lot less of it now, but in the beginning, it was a big thing.
Yeah, I think your point of like educating, and like you've touched upon this too with working with your clients, and kind of sometimes you as the designer might have a little bit more insight than the person who's the non-designer, that they're tunnel vision for their particular goal.
Yeah.
So
yeah, or they've had this problem for so long that you're finally there to work with them, that they've started working through solutions. And like our coworker has been saying, you listen to the solutions, but you don't necessarily we're not production people only. We all have minds, we critically think, and it's hearing what they're saying for their solution and reading between the lines.
So then I have a quick follow-up question for the both of you within lines to aesthetics versus functionality. So if you're a newer designer, or you're more on, it might not be the right wording, but more on the artistic side, like what tips do you have for designers who are coming up and learning that maybe you have to do this education, or maybe you have to like kind of think a little bit more critically than just doing something that looks like a great piece of art?
As a freelance designer, sometimes I get people who contact me who they don't really want to have a meeting. And I'm old school. I want to see your face. I know we're in the middle of, or hopefully at the end of the pandemic, and a lot of people aren't meeting in person, but I find it to be important because how someone talks about something, their body language, their gesturing could be the spark of inspiration you need for a piece, because they've been talking about this. I like to be at the table when the discussions start, but a lot of times you're not. You're coming in after everything has been thought through. And they've been living with this project, them talking about it, and being able to sit and watch someone talk, I find to be key in starting a project and understanding where they are with it and what their expectations are. I think research is something that a lot of people take for granted or they just don't do. It's good to see what else is out there. And not just like if you're designing an annual report, don't just research annual reports, research other things because you can find inspiration in other things. And try to get to know your client as much as possible. I feel like I'm talking more to clients right now, but
no, those are
a lot of clients are like, I need a logo. One of my first freelance, I'm not going to say who what the company was or anything like that, but one of my first freelance inquiries, this woman wanted me to design a logo for a company, and I sent her, which I now know is a mistake, because when you give clients homework, they hate that. So I gave her like a 5-question a doc for her to answer that, I wanted to know more about her company and her goals and that sort of thing, so I can make a custom logo for her. And within the weekend, she had hired someone else, and they had designed a logo for her. Now, I don't know. I didn't follow one of her business or anything, but like a logo is pretty important, and you need to invest that time, even if you're just starting out, you don't have the money. but your logo is your face. I tell my students, it's like, if like, just not trying to get religious, but if God called you in and said, we're sending you to earth, you get to design your body. Are you just going to throw something together? Or are you going to take that time to like say, this is what I want? And, that's the face of your company. It should have personality. It should also be something growing. And a lot of times I think clients think design is just something you do and just something that you can just push out. And in some cases you can, but it's also an investment in time. And I think young designers, I think a lot of them know this, but it's good to be reminded that you need to invest in what you're doing and try to learn and grow with each project that you do. Did that answer your question? I feel like
No. That was great. Okay. Those were great tips, and I think it plays well with like the education. And it plays well with so many of the topics that you two have been talking about back and forth with how you grow as a designer. So yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, and the one where you were saying to go out and see what else is out there. We've been doing that. We've had some other designers join the team, and that's like one of the activities that I ask them to do when they're trying to get onboarded is go out and see like what does another chatbot look like? What does like another video social page look like? Or a calendar, a digital calendar. So we call them, sometimes they're called like competitive landscapes. We call them like, what do I usually try and call them? Not competitive. Comparative. Yeah, doing a comparative landscape of what's out there, just to start to educate yourself. Because like in print, an annual report is very different from like a magazine layout. All the different features in the digital space, they're very different and unique. And you do have to get your like feet wet. You need to just dive in and become like a subject matter expert the best that you can in that short period of time so that you are doing what's expected. Not necessarily like trending as in like, right, like flares are trending now again, but like what are the trends of how people are communicating online in this feature, if it's in a calendar or like a learning portal, so that you're creating something within the same language for success. So yeah, totally perfect.
And then maybe this might be like a little bit of a flip of the question we just talked about. But so you two obviously have an eye for beautiful designs. Like that's like your bread and butter. You both know what looks great and what functions well and stuff like that. But what are some ways that maybe you wish UX designers better aligned beauty with designing projects? So maybe you really go to like the other way of like, this is very functional, but has no flair, has no like little spice, no, like it doesn't really attract users because it's just like, it could be the best XYZ in the world that functions, but no one's using it because it's not like pretty. I don't want to say that phrase. Like it's not pretty, but like, maybe a better way to reframe that.
Well, so I would say I'm definitely one of those designers that, and you've heard me, like I was like, it functions great, whatever. We'll deal with the aesthetics later. So it's definitely a part of me I can improve on. So I'd love to hear Angela's interpretation of this question.
Okay. So
no pressure.
No, it's like, I think it's hard to say that. It's on your audience. Like, I teach a design for the web 1, and one of your first assignments is to find a well-designed website. Okay. And I get students from 17 to 65 plus. And it's a range. And what is presented to me and the rationale behind it is valid, because someone who is maybe more mature, a little bit older, they're going to pick a site because they can read everything and it makes sense to them. Whereas I have 20-something-year-olds who like they love gaming sites. And I was like, oh my God, it's just information overload. And some of the gaming sites aren't not well designed, but they're gorgeous. But it's a little overwhelming. So I think it depends on your audience. And I don't think it's up to me to determine like, yeah, I have an opinion and I'm going to state it, but to that audience, it may work well.
Yeah, that's
like,
right. Yeah.
I had a student, she presented, I think it was a government site. It was very text heavy, very functional, but she was, I don't know if she was colorblind, but that was part of her rationale.
That's a good point.
Had a lot of contrast in it. And I saw what she was speaking of, and through her rationale, I understood like this could be a well-designed website for her. It meets her. So I think it's based on your audience and who's looking at it.
Yeah, it's like our tables on our site.
Yeah.
We had our developers were like, what? Tables are so awful. Why would anybody want that? But that is what our audience wants, it nice, formatted, laid out. I can scan it. Yeah, so funny.
Yeah, and I feel you with some of the sites like being overwhelming. Like anytime I go on any news site, it doesn't matter if it's like a cable news site, it doesn't matter like whichever one. They're trying to pump out so much at you. Yeah. And I like get so overwhelmed that I'm just like, I just want to know this. Like, what? I'm just looking up at like, I heard this thing happen. I just want to know like this one thing. And it's like everything that could possibly be going on in the world, I get like flooded with. So yeah, I feel you on that. Like, just like instant overload. So, well, yeah, no, so that was great. And then, so as we're kind of like wrapping up our discussion here, again, I feel like I get a chance to talk to the experts about this stuff. So what is one of the most important lessons that you've learned over the years in design? And then what like that you wish you've always known?
I think as a young designer, I was really like trying to get out there and like just be where I am now. And where I am now is not necessarily a destination because I'm still, working towards things. But I think we'll go back in time and say, just enjoy where you are and have patience, and you're eventually going to get there. And I think that comes with anything. Even when you're working on a project, it doesn't seem like it's ever going to end. And it's eventually going to get there. It's going to see the light of day. Just need to just invest the time, have patience with it, have patience with your clients. You'll eventually get there.
So this might be a duplicative question for you, but so maybe it's like at the end of the semester, end of the year of your teaching your students, what's like the last piece of advice you give your students? That was great advice you just said, so it might be the same, but is there like any like little like other nuggets besides your like Beyonce rules and your awesome rules that you've already shared with us today?
I tell my students to network. You need a network. You need to get out there. You need to meet people in your field. You need to get to know people that work with people within your field. A lot of people think it's about your design. Well, this is a popular field. Everyone in this field can design. Everyone knows the software. At the end of the day, it's about who you want to spend your time with. And you're not going to want to spend time with someone who's overly arrogant, who's overly shy. You're going to invest your time with people that you can get along with, I guess. So, and you need to network. I tell them it's not like getting a job at Walmart, which that could be a good job. I never worked at Walmart, but it's more about personality, I think, sometimes, because you can have a great book, but people want to know how you think. And that's something I always tell my students.
I think that's also good advice with when you have clients as a freelancer or on our projects, right? We've gotten to know the client better. So it's really enjoyable, right? Yeah. It's professional and fun all at the same time. It's not like weird and I don't know, like
tense,
yeah, and overly formal, but because we've gotten to know them, you can find those things that you get along about and have in common.
Yeah, that's great advice. And and it can be applied to anything.
Yeah.
It can be applied to any field, any person, any age, any situation. Mm-hmm. So that's perfect. It's a very great way to end your sort of thanks for a great semester together. Here's And
now is a pretty good time because a lot of things are online, so you can network from the comfort of your home. I know the summer of 2020, I got to attend events in Denver. And surprisingly enough, there's a lot of Washingtonians in Denver.
Interesting.
Denver. But I met a lot of people on the West Coast because, they had networking events online and it was accessible. Mm-hmm. And take advantage of that.
So before we wrap up here our discussion, I just wanted to ask if you had any other last burning questions, or if we will take this time to thank you so much for taking the time and being here with us.
Yes, thank you, Angela. I was so pumped for this episode.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Thank you for having me. It was great talking to you ladies.
Oh, yeah. Well, hopefully we'll get to do this again. And that was Mock It. Don't forget to subscribe, and share with your friends, and join us next time. As always, if you're interested in learning more about how government and tech collide, visit metrostar.com and see us on our socials. Thanks again for joining us.